Thank you, Chair. My comments, although they were not coordinated, actually are a very close echo to Carsten and Jonathan, so I can be very brief. I think this is a very impressive piece of work as well, and that's certainly my starting point. I think that the importance of having a sound evidence base for thinking about policy really cannot be overstated, and so I think particularly this year being an IPCC year in the broader climate change world as well, I think going back to a really sound technical assessment of this sort is incredibly important. I echo Carsten's point that how this is communicated is crucial. It's not in a sense a separate or a consideration for other people to think about how best to communicate it. The work's impact really depends on how to communicate it as clearly and effectively as possible. On the modelling, I guess what struck me as particularly impressive is this sense that it genuinely takes a systems approach. And in the Clean Energy Ministerial over the last couple of days, again and again, ministers came back to this point that you had to take a systems approach, that you couldn't think about the components individually. And what I really like about this assessment is that it starts with that proposition and it really models on that basis. That's a really distinctive contribution, and if you add to that the sense that you're thinking carefully and analytically about path dependence, you're thinking about the order in which things need to happen and the issues of lock-in, this is actually quite distinctive, and I think this is why it could make an enormous contribution if it could be communicated well and if it got the kind of audience that it deserves. I think if I just conclude with a couple of quick thoughts from thinking about the impact on policymakers or what policymakers would take away from this. I think what policymakers are looking for in design terms are, in a sense, what is the simplest set of rules that we could use to try and set up the system, set up what we're looking at in a way that will then allow it to function as naturally as possible. They're looking for the simplicity on the other side of complexity. You've shown the complexity very well, but really drawing out the simplicity on the other side of complexity is critical. And I think particularly this focus on what's really important, focus on a limited number of goals, and really getting policymakers to think about the goals, set the goals, and then you don't need to assume the paths, you don't need to assume the particular implementation, you don't need to assume the particular business model. A lot of the conversation in the last few days has been about the regulatory challenges that come when business models are disrupted enormously. And really for policymakers, the only way to get their heads around that is to say, really what you're interested in is end use. You're not particularly interested in exactly how people do things. And so I'd certainly push you in your recommendations and your impact on policymakers to think about simplicity, to draw out these issues that you've thought carefully about systems approaches and path dependence, and really think about what that means in terms of a simple set of rules or a simple set of goals that you can equip policymakers with.